Well, one of my family's favorite stores is called Marbles the Brain Store. And this store is filled with puzzles, lots and lots of puzzles, all different kinds of puzzles that are typically beyond the ability of these marbles to handle. When anybody ever tells you this phrase, it's not that hard, it's easy, all you have to do is, then you can automatically assume that that is a puzzle that's beyond my ability. I also remember when I first moved up here to Minnesota, I heard that phrase a lot, especially as I was learning how to ski. I went skiing with Our Savior's Lutheran Church in Faribault, Minnesota. Thank you guys. A shout out to you guys. I hope everything is going well in your community. But they took me skiing and they kept saying, it's not hard, it's easy. All you have to do is, and fall after fall after fall, embarrassed, frustrated, voices inside my head telling me to give it up, a little bit of pain. I think I still have a little bit of something from 26 years ago. But finally, I began to ski up and down the hills in Minnesota, and then later on the mountains of Montana. It was great fun. It's hard, not easy. All you have to do is fill in the blank. Sounds a little bit like the scripture text that Cece read for us today. Thank you, Cece. Taking on 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That was a long chunk, and you did a great job. Wonderful setting there with your fireplace. And I, too, hope that we can all be together soon, sooner rather than later, hopefully. But when we read that scripture, it's almost like someone telling you all you have to do is love, or all you need is love, right? I think that's a song. Yeah. The Beatles. All you need is love, right? If it were only that easy. Well, the Gospel of Matthew kind of gives us some clues on this journey of love. And Jesus is talking with his disciples. And in Matthew chapter 11, starting with verse 28, Jesus says this: "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and my load is not hard to carry." Yoke? What? That's not necessarily a word we use. We think of like maybe an egg yolk, but it's a very different kind of thing than an egg yolk. So if you need to pause the video right now, jump on Google, your phone or your computer. I'm going to give you a moment, and I'll let you run and try to figure out what the yoke is. Come on back when you're ready. Okay, you probably figured it out. Pretty interesting, right? Interesting way of using that as a tool. Well, Jesus uses this word yoke in reference to his teaching. If you were to take on someone's yoke, especially a rabbi's yoke, you would take on their teaching. And so Jesus is offering his disciples his teaching, and he's focusing it. And when we read through the Gospel of John, we get a real clear sense of what that teaching is. In the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also should love one another." Now, you may have heard that phrase in various different forms. We call that, part of that, the golden rule, but it's a very different commandment. The golden rule is love one another as you would love yourself. Now, of course, we don't love ourselves that well a lot of the time. But Jesus turns it and says, love one another as I have loved you. It's a very different love. It's a love wrapped in sacrifice. It's a love that gives of itself. So as the story continues, Jesus shows us how that love is to be acted out. And in that story, we see Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Not a good thing. Some nasty feet. And Jesus takes all these feet and washes them. And even Peter tries to get away and tries to say, no, Jesus, don't do this. But Jesus washes every single one of his disciples' feet. He even washes Judas's feet. What? Wait a second. Judas? Jesus washes Judas's feet? That doesn't make sense. You mean the same Judas that Jesus called the devil? Here we have in John chapter 6, Jesus says, Jesus answered them, did I not choose you, the 12? Yet one of you is a devil. He was speaking of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, for he, though one of the 12, was going to betray him. That word devil can be used as, can be rephrased as the son of destruction. So this is the same same Judas who Jesus calls the son of destruction, the same Judas who shows up with the soldiers later on to arrest Jesus, the same Judas who Jesus says he could not save. Jesus washes the feet of his betrayer and commands us to do the same. And now I know what you're thinking, because I'm thinking the same thing. No way that's going to happen, right? Jesus, you said, come to you, and that you would give us rest, and that your yoke, your teachings would not be hard to carry. Well, I think you forgot about this one. But let's break it down a little bit. Let's get in a little bit closer. Let's see what Jesus actually does with Judas. First of all, Jesus does not play the victim. Jesus is not the victim in this story. Jesus does not give Judas power. Later in the text, Jesus calls out Judas. Jesus calls him out and sends him away. Jesus commands Judas. Jesus stands strong on the rules of love, not on the rules of Satan. See here, the rules of love demand service. The rules of Satan demand hate and selfishness. So in the midst of evil, Jesus girds himself not with the sword, but with a towel. And Jesus meets Satan with love. Love meets hate head on. Now, in Jesus' time, to eat together was a big deal. Not only that, but it was a really big deal for the host of the gathering to give bread, to extend a piece of bread to someone at their table. It was the ultimate sign of hospitality. Jesus' last gesture to Judas was to extend Judas bread. He gave him bread. His last gesture to Judas was hospitality. Jesus meets evil by being the best host he can be. So Jesus responds to deception with truth. Jesus responds to death with life. Jesus responds to hate with love. And in the end, love has the last word. What do people see when they look at you? No, not the color of your hair, not your sense of fashion, or the color of your eyes. What do people see when they look at you? It's not the easiest of questions. Do they see the greatest gift? The one most spectacular gift? The gift that makes all others pale in comparison. The gift that all other gifts point to. The gift that gives meaning to all other gifts. That creates all things out of nothing. Steadfast. Patient. Kind. Never ending. always, abundant, abiding, sacrificial. The gift of love, the greatest of these above all else. The gift that we are supposed to clothe ourselves with. The best, to wear love. It's amazing, isn't it, that you and I have the capacity, the ability, no, the expectation of putting on love, to wrap ourselves in love, making love the one overwhelming sight, love, the one thing that everyone sees. So why is it that we wrap ourselves in everything else? Why do we wrap ourselves in things that are not steadfast? Temporary things, things that will only fade. Pride and arrogance. Unreliable things that flutter and snap in whatever direction the wind happens to blow. The prophet Isaiah calls this stumbling around being drunk on the illusion of our own power, self-serving, indulgent, creating numbed illusions, a refuge of lies that we build for ourselves, a power grab based on denial, a false sense of security, thinking we are safe, hidden away behind our selfishness, when in reality we have made ourselves a bed that is too short, we've woven a blanket that is unable to cover. And we all do it. Wrap ourselves in things other than love. No need to finger point. That's become too easy. It's all of our confession. The above all things at times becomes love, well, the lowest of all things. And it's hard. All the good stuff seems to be, it always is. It takes effort. But to recognize our humanness propels us to seek beyond ourselves, to our Creator, to our God who says, I am your rest. Let me show you. Let me guide you. There is a way. Follow me. It's unchanging, never ending. Love one another. For something new is being planted right now. Strength grows right now. Again, I say love one another, not just as you would love yourselves, but one another as I have loved you. Steadfast sacrifice one another. For I am justice. I am truth. I am love. Wrap yourselves in that. Well, Resurrection family and friends, our nation is again struggling with racial violence. Young black man just jogging in his neighborhood is chased and shot. And it's an all too familiar occurrence. Many of you know bits and pieces of my story growing up brown, first in the South and then up here in the North, and experiencing racism differently in both of those places. I've shared with you the times that I was denied service in restaurants where I was not even given a chance to order food, where I was denied access to public swimming pools because of the color of my skin, the name calling, the frightened looks that I get from my Caucasian brothers and sisters when I share an elevator with them, or other enclosed spaces like aisles in a grocery store. I'm not sure what they think I'm going to do. Or the stares my wife and I get in certain unnamed states for being married, biracial or interracial marriage. Well, I'm going to name one state because I'm a Longhorn. So I'm going to give a shout out to Oklahoma. How you doing? How's it going at the breakfast buffet this morning? My wife and I stayed overnight in a hotel in a city in Oklahoma, and that morning that breakfast buffet was humming with racial tension as they saw me and my wife sit down. The grits just didn't taste the same that morning for some reason. Or the story of my new neighbor Abraham, an African-American man who intentionally walks the neighborhood. He walks the neighborhood. He wants people to know that he's there and that he belongs. I grew up with racial violence, the racial tensions, very thick. And this latest shooting and then the attempt to cover it up, frankly, is not new. It's a sickening drum that keeps beating over and over again. And it's tough. There's a reason why lots of books have been written about this, and PhDs are conferred and given out to people who study racism. And it's not an easy conversation to have. But for me, the bottom line is this, and I want to share this with you, maybe give you some tools as we move forward together. In line with our scripture and our message today, racism is Judas. There's no doubt about it. Racism is betrayal, and it always will be. The very things you say about Judas are the same things that we should be saying about racism. It lies to everyone, especially to the racist. It corrupts, it seeks its own power, and while it does unspeakable damage, in the end, just like Judas, it will end in failure. So out of love, my encouragement to you is to meet Satan, to meet racism the same way Jesus did. And I'm not talking just on social media, making a post and doing a like. I mean, actually in real time, confront this insidious disease. Respond to the deception of racism with truth. Respond to the death of racism with life. Respond to the hate of racism with love. Every time. And in the end, remember, love has the last word, because the greatest of these is love.